All right, you guys. Well, we have just
The thoughts, opinions, and general overall shades thrown on High at Nine News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at Nine News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at Nine News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck and Rico Lamitte, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday, you guys. That's right. It is Monday, August 5th. And today is National Oyster Day, you guys. It's also National...
Yay.
Yeah, everyone loves some oysters, right?
I like that one.
Yes.
That's shellfish, man. I can't enjoy that, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
More for me.
I'll let y'all slurp down that all shell snot.
Oh boy. It's also National Work Like a Dog Day because it's Monday. Yes. And Mathieu St. Germain, this is for you, bro. It's National Underwear Day.
I wear them sometimes.
Yes, yes. Anyways, thank you all for
anti-underwear crusader over there.
Oh boy. Thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look up above or down below to see exactly where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and on our very own website at www.highat9news.com. So thank you to everyone joining us from any one of those platforms. But kicking it off today, that's right, we have the dope dad himself, Mr. Rico Lamitte. Oh man, look at you, bro. You are in all white today. Is this for your story? Did you dress up just for your story? Oh man, I can't wait for you guys to hear about the man known as Mr. White. That's right, it is none other than the dope dad himself, Mr. Rico Lamitte.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Jason.
Mm-hmm.
We're all colorblind this morning.
Oh my God.
We're
off to a good start.
Santa Rosa, California is the well-known home to the Emerald Cup, arguably the cannabis industry's most prestigious annual festival and award show, with this year's going down 2 weekends from now, August 17th and 18th. The city of Santa Rosa is Sonoma County's largest, and in 2023 and 2024 was ranked by U.S. News and World Report as 8th on its list of most expensive places to live in the U.S., even more so than New York City, believe it or not. Though not as popular or ritzy as neighboring Napa, Sonoma shares the characteristic of being a world-renowned wine region, albeit a bit larger, cooler, with many locals and visitors alike calling the county more laid back of the two, but still very expensive. And the reason why I bring up the money of Sonoma County is because we all know wherever there's a lot of money, there's gonna be folks pissed off that they ain't got more. And in America, the richest places to live just so happen to be the whitest places to be. And when you mix a whole lot of money, a whole lot of white people, and a whole lot of wine, and a whole lot of weed, white tears will fall. There's bound to be a few folks crying out about how they've unfairly been left out, especially when certain legislative opportunities designed to assist folks that are not looking like them get passed. And here's where the curious case of John Lowe comes into play. According to SF Gates Lester Black, John Lowe, a local pot shop owner in Sonoma County who received nearly $40,000 in social equity grant funding in May, had a bone to pick. Many bones. And much like others in California and now across the nation, Sonoma's Cannabis Social Equity Program aims to help people impacted by marijuana criminalization succeed in the cannabis industry. But what makes Lowe's case notable is not the fact that he's a white man that got that good government check. It's the fact that before receiving said grant, Lowe very publicly attacked the county's equity grant programs as quote-unquote racist, and threatened county officials during a fall meeting, saying that white people will stand up. You will not intimidate us, insinuating repercussions shall occur if his name is not on that list. In an interview with SF Gate Wednesday, Lowe said that he was only awarded the grant because he was actively investigating the program, saying that it's a racist program. I called it out for what it was. I hovered over it, and I made sure it wasn't racist. And because of that, they were not able to be as racist as they would have liked to have been. I wonder who this guy is voting for. Black said in the article that despite Lowe's description of the program, Sonoma County did not ask for applicants' race or use race as a factor in deciding who received the grants, according to the county's application website. Instead, eligibility was determined by whether an applicant or the close family members had been arrested for a nonviolent cannabis offense. From there, applicants were evaluated on 11 other factors, including veteran status and whether they had a quote-unquote small-scale cultivation farm to determine how much money they received. Per the article, the county announced in May that it had issued $635,000 in cannabis grants in true socialist equity fashion, sending money to all 20 people who applied for the program. County Supervisor David Rabbit said in a May press release that the program aims to serve socioeconomically disadvantaged individuals in the industry. But an investigation by Sebastopol Times found that a majority of the 20 recipients are among the most successful and influential people in the county's pot industry, including 4 people associated with Spark, a cannabis retailer with 7 different locations across the Bay Area. But they really needed it. I bet they needed that money. The local grants are part of a statewide initiative that has issued more than $100 million in social equity grants aimed at making it easier for low-income people and people damaged by cannabis criminalization to succeed in the cannabis industry. The local controversy in Sonoma comes as questions mount over the effectiveness of the various cannabis social equity efforts across the state. Cannabis social equity programs across the country have been attacked as providing unfair advantages to individual entrepreneurs. MJ Biz Daily reported earlier this year that these delays have severely damaged the equity programs and delayed their issuance of licenses. The Jensens. Lowe requested $1 million on his application. He was awarded $39,687.50, according to the Sebastopol Times. When SF Gate asked Lowe how the program was racist, given that it does not use race as a qualifying factor, he said the entire Sonoma County government is racist because it uses social equity or racial equity toolkit when evaluating policy. Such toolkits are commonly used by local governments to measure how their public policies affect different communities. Lowe also pointed to a single line in the county's equity description that states that wealthy white stakeholders increasingly own the county's licensed cannabis landscape. A 2021 county analysis estimated Sonoma's pot stores were owned by 75 to 78% white males. Lowe said the county was engaging in anti-white tropes by conducting and stating this analysis because facts and data are inherently racist. Right. Lowe said that ultimately his grant was a success for white people, who he claimed were the most disadvantaged group in recent history because of affirmative action programs. Good thing a Black Supreme Court justice, one of the good ones, put an end to all that. Am I right? It was a win for me and for white people who feel like these programs were written to exclude them, Lowe said. To too much to unpack with this one on a Monday morning, I tell y'all. So I'll just say this. Justice is blind. The fact that those on either side of its administration often have 20/20 vision, that's the problem. As much as we want to view social equity as an awesome opportunity to help Black and brown folks in neighborhoods of color reverse some of the wrongs disproportionately done to them for decades by the clear-eyed racist administrators of American justice, social equity cannot and will not exist without assholes like John Lowe or the Jensens coming for what they believe to be owed to them too. It's why I have said for years, and I will continue saying it until it happens, the only way people of color in America will ever get a chance to exclusively experience a bit of that good blind justice our melanated neighbors, our non-melanated neighbors seem to enjoy much more frequently is through reparations. It is what it is. And oh yeah, for those of y'all wondering what the name of this man's dispensary is, I left it out of the story on purpose. Y'all can look it up on your own time because I feel like giving this dude free advertising would be akin to him receiving his reparations before I get mine. Fuck that.
Damn, I pulled it up.
The dopest dad
I pulled it up.
High 9 News. Please don't say that shit. Please. Absolutely, please don't fucking
I'm not because you said no, but I was going to. I'm glad you addressed it.
Comments.
Comments. I mean, I think so the Sonoma County Equity Program, like their grant there's a lot of complaints about that grant program because everyone who applied for it got it. And there was some gatekeeping that supposedly happened, that people knew that it was going to come out, and that the less people that applied for it, there were like 20 slots or something, 16 people ended up signing up. So those 16 people were all guaranteed to get it. So the issue was like gatekeeping and things like that in Sonoma County. So I think, oh God, just hearing this guy speak and hearing the way that he talks about the equity program is cringe. And I can't believe that people like him feel like this and are so willing to stand up and scream everything but white power in the community center. So I'm done. That's all I can say without being impolite.
Oh, we're fine with the impoliteness, just so you know.
I can't believe people like this exist. And stories like this remind us every once in a while, even more so now than usual, that they do exist. And I think it's important that we know that these people exist, because I would much rather continue to give them freedom of speech so we can make choices of who we do business with.
That's a fair point.
I wanted to give out his email address so we could freely speak back to him, but I was going to hold that back at Rico's suggestion.
Thank you.
Well, I'll tell you what. Ben LeBone had a great, fantastic comment in the chat. He says, "How low can you go when you spark one?"
Boy.
Yes. That was.
How many Black people live in Sonoma County?
Unfortunately, not a lot, Jenny. Like, one of the biggest bummers about living in Sonoma County is just the absence of more Black and brown folks around. You know, there's a good Mexican-American community, but there's not a big Asian community. There's not a big Black community. So it's something that we in
I was
Sonoma
spending
County
about a week a month up there for work, and I think I added to the population every time I was in and out for that week.
Agreed. You know, the thing that I'd like to highlight is this insane level of white fragility that's going on in this country that's really been empowering Trump and the Republicans. Republicans have been digging deep into this to kind of institute their Christian theocratic state. Just imagine if Black and brown Americans would behave like this, like these white folks do. These white folks aren't being forced into the projects. They aren't having everything taken from them. They haven't had the Black and brown folks of the area rise up like the Tulsa race riots and burn down everything that they own. And I would just like to say that I'd like to use this as a moment to highlight the character of our Black and brown neighbors and fellow citizens and residents who a lot of times get the shaft but behave as real Americans and behave as good neighbors. And I just hate to see gentlemen like this in Sonoma County or representing Sonoma County in the media, because the vast majority of folks in Sonoma County are fair and open-minded human beings. And I would say,
yeah,
you're here to Rico. And one of the things I've been saying about, cannabis companies, and I think this would be a great way to start this in some way, shape, or form, is what if these cannabis companies, and use this as an example for other companies who are making money on land in California that was rightfully owned by indigenous people, that we have a clear record of that land being stolen at gun and bayonet point. What if these cannabis companies were to portion some part of their profits, not their operating expense, and no one's really that profitable yet, what if these cannabis companies were to apportion some portion of their profits, pay back the folks whose land that they are using to make themselves wealthy, at least in theory, right? Money for medical programs and educational programs to Indigenous Americans, find ways to give back to the other communities of color that have been disadvantaged, and really whose backs we built this entire state and country on. I'd be interested to know what you guys think of.
Yeah, man. There's a lot of different ways that you can, at least help out folks. And I would like to say this is not indicative of Sonoma County. Every time I've been up there, I got like some really, really good friends up there. I've always been treated like family, straight up. I hope I never come across this gentleman or folks like him up there. There's a reason why I don't live in Virginia, where I am from. Growing up with a lot of this shit out in the open all the time, I mean, it just beats on you. Not even, thank God, not literally for me, but metaphorically, it just beats on you. And it just like makes you depressed, makes you just feel bad about yourself, about everything around you all the damn time. And it causes you to do fucked up things too, whether it's to yourself or to your community. So I'm just glad that, like people are calling folks like this out. But I do think that it's trash, like straight up, that people in the community, knowing who this motherfucker is, are still supporting him. So
the easy thing is, I've lived here for over 17 years now and never even heard this dude's name, except one other article where he was getting in trouble for firing semi-automatic weapons at his place in Sebastopol, which sounded like the least Sebastopolian thing I've ever heard of, bro.
Sebastopol has a ban on assault weapons?
Well, no, but most of the parcels in Sebastopol are like 1 to 3 acres.
Got it.
So if you're nonstop firing semi-automatic weapons, you're just being a dick to your neighbors.
Yeah, you're probably
kind of akin to just sitting out in your backyard, an air horn constantly. Like, who cares?
How do you know it's not like deer season?
Because I live here and you can't.
You don't really use semi-automatic weapons to hunt deer. If you do, you're a big old dickhead.
Oh, so true, Jenny.
Yeah. You're just delivering deers.
This is something. Very first year I moved to Mendo, I made this same mistake, and then really figured it out quick because I was pissing off my neighbors, and then realized, here, especially in September and October, when you hear the gunfire, like, oh, that dude's got weed and is scared shitless right now. It's kind of like this. It's kind of like the little fragile, weak bitch alarm. You're like, oh, you've got weed. You're scared. You've never done this before. So you just shoot your guns off because you're frightened.
And Elise, the Hashanista, says in the chat, she says, at least Sonoma pretended to try. Marin wouldn't even allow licenses, let alone an equity program. So what do you have to say?
Because it's all these old hippies that preach so much inclusion and equality and equity in the 60s. They all moved to Marin and got rich through the various ancillary businesses related to performance and live music, and then just became the biggest NIMBYs and kind of locked everybody out. Marin hippies are the reason why the BART system still doesn't go to Marin.
Yeah.
Even though we have a smart train going from Sonoma down to Marin, there's no way to get from Sonoma or Oakland or the South Bay to Marin and vice versa, because of that blockade of the train system.
Is that why?
It's like that in Beverly Hills, right?
Is that why?
Because
basically,
is that why the Golden Gate Bridge is more expensive than all the other bridges too? Matthew,
it is. Jay, probably is.
It probably is, right?
I don't know. Marin was difficult because I actually consulted with them, and they wanted the tax revenue, but they did not want brick and mortar. They were so against brick and mortar. They're like, I'm like, you can't have people manufacturing products and consuming products if you're not willing to let them sell them. That doesn't make any sense. So they were very short-sighted, I will agree. But I don't think that, Sonoma County has done, I don't know. Sonoma's allowed some things. I've dealt with some of the regulators there, which are very difficult as well.
It's crazy. Because in the early days of 215, there was a dispensary in Fairfax back in the day, and that was like in the early days. Shout out to Lynette Shaw and her work out there. And we also want to give a big acknowledgement to the C word with a big old super chat that says Sonoma County represent. Yes, thank you, the C word. That part. Oh man, we're way over time. Anyone else have any closing statements on this one?
Fuck racism.
Fair enough.
If you're born on Earth, you're related to everybody else who's born on Earth. We're a family.
That part is true.
You're racist, you're lazy. You're just lazy.
That part is true. The science on that is that everyone is at least a 30th cousin, you guys. Every single human being on planet Earth.
The Genghis Khan, man.
Yes.
Out there.
And on that, we're going to go to a commercial. We're going to be right back.
Oh, man, that was weird. Hey, you, America. Do I look like Sean Connery? Good morning, America. Saman Razani coming to you live from sunny Los Angeles, California with the one and only highest host, Mr. Jason Beck, smoking on the best weed in the world. Did you know that we have an audio-only version of our podcast? You can find it on Apple, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. No excuses in 2024. If you haven't checked us out, check it out now. And also, check out what the Prophet's doing in 2024.
Up next, he is the highest Republican in every room that he walks into. He's known for smoking the best weed in the world.
That's right.
Known as the cannabis industry's very own Kaiser Brose. In Detroit is White Gucci. And here, it's Jason Beck.
That's right.
Yeah, for us this morning.
Oh, man, Rico. You know, we've been covering this whole Florida initiative. And, you know, Truly put $5 million in. They'd put in another $5 million in. But let me tell you something, what's happening. That's right, because billionaire Ken Griffin donates millions to oppose Florida adult use measure. That's right. Billionaire investor Ken Griffin has come out against Florida's adult use marijuana ballot measure, and he's donating buku bucks to oppose it. That's right, you guys. Griffin, a Miami resident and CEO of the multinational Citadel hedge fund, said he's donating a total of $20 million to oppose Amendment 3 and support various political candidates for the 2024 election. The POD initiative is a terrible plan to create the nation's most expansive and destructive marijuana laws, Griffin wrote in a Friday morning opinion piece published in the Miami Herald. Vote No on 3, the campaign against the measure announced later in the day that $12 million of the $20 million would go to its efforts. In a quote, "These valuable resources will help us as we continue to ramp up what will be a vigorous and full-throttled campaign to warn Floridians about this deceptive amendment that would make Florida the California of the East," campaign spokesperson Sarah Bascom said in a statement. Amendment 3, if it gets at least 60% of the vote, would allow non-medical marijuana possession of up to 3 ounces with no more than 5 grams in concentrated form for those 21 years older and up. And a quote, "Passage of Amendment 3 would create a monopoly for large marijuana dispensaries and permit pot use in public and private areas throughout Florida," wrote Griffin. A common conservative donor, in an additional quote, says, "That will help no one other than special interests, and it will hurt us all, especially through more dangerous roads, a higher risk of addiction among our youth, and an increase in crime." But Smart and Safe Florida, the group heading the pro-amendment campaign, has adamantly refuted those allegations. In a quote, they say, "The language of the amendment explicitly states that the Florida legislature retains the full ability to regulate the public use of marijuana." It writes on the Myths versus Facts page of its website. "The legislature will have the right to enact regulations that ensure clean, family-friendly public spaces, just as it does now with tobacco and alcohol." The group has largely been funded by TruLeave, the state's largest medical marijuana operator, and its spokesperson did not immediately respond to a request for comment. But Smart and Safe Florida also argues that the amendment would improve public health, providing, in quotes, "quality control and regulation," while also reducing crime. It writes, "Legalization has led to a decrease in gang violence and has hurt Mexican cartels, which now have a smaller market in the U.S." More than 1 million Floridians signed a petition to put Amendment 3 on the ballot so that no adult will go to jail for possessing small amounts of marijuana, and Floridians will no longer have to turn to street products laced with dangerous substances like fentanyl, said Smart and Safe Florida spokesperson Morgan Hill in a statement. In an additional quote, "We remain focused on communicating the public health benefits and expanding individual freedom of legalizing adult use marijuana for adults and creating a better Florida for all," Hill continued. Most polls have predicted that the amendment currently has enough to support to pass despite ardent opposition from Governor Ron DeSantis and the Republican Party of Florida. But conservative State Senator Joe Gruthers, a former Florida Republican Party chair and Trump ally, recently endorsed Amendment 3, and Gruthers said he believes there are other GOP lawmakers who also support it but don't want to oppose the state GOP establishment's position, you guys. Look at that. We got some closet Republicans over here supporting Amendment 3, they're stating. But nonetheless, I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this.
I'm pretty sure there's just leftover money that he did not donate to Ron DeSantis's presidential campaign. And it's arguably like one of the reasons why he dropped out of the race, because he wasn't getting those big donors. And Ken Griffin was he was noted as quote unquote on the fence for backing his presidential campaign, even though he gave a bunch of money to his last gubernatorial bid. So it's probably the money. He was just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna give this to you because Trump's gonna whip that ass. But drum up some shit in Florida.
I mean,
the money's yours.
I do find it interesting.
Can we get a soundbite of Rico saying Trump's gonna beat that ass?
Yeah, we can do that. Yes, 100%. But you know, I do find it interesting that he pledged the 20 million, and it says that the 12 million is going to go towards the thing. So I'm wondering what the other 8 million. At first, when I first read it, I thought it was that the 12 million was going to go initially, and then they would have another 8 million in reserves to spend, you know, in the last month or so of the election and whatnot in like a blitz campaign. But I want to know what they're going to do with that other $8 million that he's pledged, or if he's just going to keep it and just saying, hey, we're just going to hold that on reserves in case you guys don't spend the full 12.
He's probably going to dedicate it to a heel lift company
for Ron DeSantis, for the governor. You know, so he's going to start a boot company.
Puss in Boots.
Puss in Boots. Oh boy, so cute, so cute. Fair enough. Any thoughts on this?
Feel for Florida, man. They're like 15 years ago right now.
Right.
Real talk.
I mean,
feel like we need to come from the future and help them.
Even Donald Trump is still big down there. You know what I'm saying? Just like 15 years ago. Everywhere.
Speaking of Donald Trump, did you see when his lifts came out of his shoes when they almost clipped him there in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, that was crazy.
Whoa.
Yeah.
All right. So here's the
whoa. Hey.
We're not going down all that.
Divine God Emperor does not wear lifts, you guys.
I mean, there's nothing wrong
He's
with
like
lifts. I wear lifts.
6'4". I don't know what he's lifting up to, but I mean, he's big enough.
Without the shoes,
some people feel inadequate no matter how tall or et cetera they are.
I understand. I feel inadequate often, but I think that the glaring sad part is how much money people are willing to spend to keep people from having access to cannabis. I think that's just like, that's a large amount of fucking money that could do a lot of good in Florida, a state that is ruined by hurricanes every year, a state that has so many fucking people just absolutely struggling. And instead of doing good with that money, you're trying to stop progress, which is very disheartening.
Well, this is a great point, Jenny Beth. I wonder if Ken Griffin dedicated any of that money to the hurricane that's about to hit right now in Florida, where they're calling like a national emergency and shit. I wonder if any of the money went towards that. It just all went to hating.
If you read the op-ed that's referenced in this article, you can tell where Governor DeSantis gets a lot of his talking points in regards to that he had released previously, and so that all makes a lot of sense. But I did find it very interesting in this article that the Amendment 3 people came out and said how that this will actually improve quality. And I'm just like, how is this amendment going to improve quality of cannabis? Because there's nothing in there about any of that.
Good point. I love y'all. Gotta go.
It's a mids market in Florida.
There we go.
Yes. Yes. We're gonna keep this train rolling. Mathieu St. Germain, we can go to you, or we can cover you in the second half, because I have 2 stories today, or 3 stories, excuse me.
I'll follow your cue here, fearless leader.
It's totally up to you if you want to go now or you want to go after the break. It's all up to you.
Before Jay.
All right. Fair enough. I'm going to roll into my next story then, you guys. This is a little bit of a long one, so I do apologize. This was going to be a Yarrow story, but he is not feeling well. He needs to rest so that he can be fresh with us tomorrow. But he says, an ex-NYC undersheriff sidelined for whistleblowing about illegal cannabis raids, you guys. That's right. The Bronx former undersheriff was relegated to a cubicle and stripped of his duties for sounding the alarm that the pot raids under Mayor Eric Adams' initial crackdown were illegal, the lawsuit says. Derek Shuzinski said a sterling 10-year career with the New York City Sheriff's Office that all came crashing down after Anthony Miranda took over as city sheriff in May of 2022, according to a Brooklyn federal lawsuit filed last week. Miranda immediately began discriminating against Shuzinski, who's skyrocketed his role at just 32 because of his age and his leadership role as a vice president in the sheriff's union, court papers claim. The plaintiff eventually ended up in the agency's version of a no man's land after revealing the illegality of the Adams administration initial pot shop crackdown, his lawsuit states. In a quote, "I was working as a police officer for a reason. I loved it. I wanted to help people," Shuzinski recently told the Post. Being moved to a room where I had a 2-hour commute in each direction to serve no function is completely demoralizing, he says. Shuzinski, who was a PhD and is slated to start law school in 2 weeks, was retaliated against after he started warning Miranda that the raids of illegal cannabis vendors were unconstitutional because they were being conducted under the guise of tobacco inspections, and the officers also showed up armed without search warrants, said the court papers and the plaintiff. None of the businesses the office raided actually sold tobacco, the lawsuit says, and the agents' actions violated search and seizure protections under both the 4th and 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, the suit says. To date, the city has helped close 1,009 unregulated pot outlets across the state and seized $63 million in illegal weed as it tries to halt the wild proliferation of rogue shops after New York legalized marijuana. Shuzinski's suit also says that as shops were being shuttered, the sheriff's office was seizing erroneous amounts of the drug and struggling to find places to store the substance, which sickened and an overwhelming number of deputies and staff. Many workers, in quotes, were experiencing significant health issues as a result of handling and storing seized marijuana. That just sounds crazy to me. And in fact, E. coli, salmonella, and lead were found in some of the drugs that were seized, the suit says. In just under 3 months alone, from November of 2022 through January 20th of 2023, the office confiscated a whopping 600 pounds of marijuana, the suit says. 600 pounds is millions of dollars. In a quote, the amount of marijuana seized was so vast that the defendant Miranda ordered deputy sheriffs to store the marijuana in unsafe conditions without any regard for the safety of his employees, the papers allege. Shuzinski claimed they were storing marijuana wherever they could. They had cargo containers filled with marijuana. We had offices and closets filled with marijuana, vehicles filled with marijuana. They were literally storing it anywhere they could think of, he said. How about in the trunks of their cars? But this was all done without any training or procedures of how to confiscate, handle, and store the contraband, bud, Shuzinski and the filing allege. Shuzinski said that after he questioned the illegality of the raids and raised the health issues, he was demoted. That included being stripped of his guns, badge, and all his duties, to the point he wasn't even allowed to access work emails or enter any facility other than the building where he was reassigned, the suit said. And Shuzinski says, Then, in May 2nd of 2023, after he attended a funeral at a church for the mother of a deputy sheriff, Shuzinski was met with SWAT team and frisked by a superior who eventually slapped him with disciplinary charges for a previously unsubstantiated 2021 City Department of investigation. The filing claims, you guys. Oh, wow, they're investigating an investigation. Look at that. The charges were tied to a probe from November of 2020 through January of 2021 against Shuzinski and some colleagues accused of misconduct while seizing contraband evidence during an enforcement operation, the lawsuit says, noting the case was eventually dropped. And Shuzinski's lawyer, Paul Laguerre, told the Post that magically, right after my client threw his union complaints about the pot shop crackdown and health issues, this DOI referral and complaint comes back up from years ago, he says. The SWAT team drove to the plaintiff's home and illegally seized his personal weapons and other belongings such as his diploma, family photos, and kitchen appliances that he had at the office, claiming it was part of its probe, the suit says. And Shuzinski was suspended for a month over the debacle, only to get reassigned in June of 2023 to a position in Manhattan, 2 hours away from his home in Nassau County, for a no-work job in a cubicle where he was barred from earning any overtime pay, the suit and Shuzinski claim. In his new role, Shuzinski wasn't allowed into any other department facilities, and when he entered the Manhattan building where he was assigned, he had to go through the security line with civilians since he was stripped of his work badge, he said. Oh, it's so... He also couldn't help or speak with any of his staff because he didn't have access to his work email or other work communications, he said. And Shuzinski said his breaking point came after months and months of that without any real end in sight. And it was progressively getting worse. It came to a point where it wasn't worth it to do it anymore, he told the Post, and they won. They got their pound of flesh, he said. He eventually quit his job in October of 2023 after roughly 5 months of showing up for his no-work job, but he continued to be paid through July 27th for vacation time he never used, he said. Shuzinski started a new position in May of 2024 as the Commissioner of Public Safety for the town of North Hampstead on Long Island, and in a quote says, "They chose to punish him," Laguerre said of city officials and his client. "They did everything they could to silence him, and that's not going to stop him." Laguerre also says he hopes the lawsuit will help make his client whole again after his alleged mistreatment, and the City Department of Finance, which oversees the sheriff's office, said the claims in the suit are from before the city's Operation Padlock to protect, which are our current operations, suggesting changes have been made. In an additional quote, "We will review the complaint," the office added, and they also say there are now 103 legal cannabis stores open throughout the Empire State, and the surge of unlicensed shops, of which there are an estimated 2,900 in the Big Apple, came after Governor Andrew Cuomo signed the bill legalizing adult-use marijuana back in 2021, you guys. Man, oh man, oh man. And I thought everybody loved a good whistleblower. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this.
You know, the scariest part of me is that unsafe storage.
Right?
I sniffed the marijuanas one time, and look what happened to me.
I mean, I can't believe that these people are claiming that they're getting sick from the weed being stored there. I mean, they must
be fucking moldy ass last year's weed,
it's gotta have so much powder mold in it. It's gotta be like maybe like that True Leaf facility in Massachusetts.
The powdery
Please
mildew
leave
looks
True
like
Leaf out of this,
LeBron
Jason.
claps his hands.
What's that, Matthew?
Can we please leave True Leaf out of this? We know they're the most caring Death Star ever.
Fair enough. What was that, Jenny Beth?
I said the powdery mildew in there looks like when LeBron James claps his hands, you know what I mean, right before the game.
Oh, the chalk.
Baby powder.
The baby powder. Oh, man.
I don't know. I just, once again, shout out to the largest gang in America, the police department.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny how they chose to eat their own on this one. That is.
I'm really.
They always do. I mean, like I've heard friends who've had family that were high up and wanted to say things, especially back when racial profiling was, which it happens plenty today, but it was much more bold, and they were a little bit more comfortable talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
and wanted to say things and wanted to correct things, but they were threatened by other people throughout the departments. And the police are not, just because they're wearing a badge doesn't mean that they're not a criminal organization.
Yeah.
Police were started to return runaway slaves to their owners. Sheriffs were started in the late dark ages, make sure that the common people not retreat back to the commons to grow food or harvest game after the aristocracy made it illegal folks to exist or farm or hunt on common land. So people are surprised that either of these organizations are doing dastardly shit towards people of color or the economically disadvantaged. I always try to remember them. If you just read your history, this is not an aberration. This is literally the reason why they were formed. They're actually doing their job exactly like they're supposed to. So hats off to the police and sheriffs. Good job, you guys.
Protect and serve the wealthy.
Correct. But what I'm really wondering is, in the next 10 years, are we going to see some arc where cannabis goes to some form of normalcy, where we realize it's a plant, it's non-toxic, there's no LD50. The LD50 is like how much you need of this thing to kill someone in a dose, right? It's non-toxic. It's hugely beneficial. Do we get to a point where we realize it's the cancer fighter, not a cancer causer? And a lot of these incrustations of attempts to wring out more revenue from something that doesn't really have a lot in it other than being illegal and having that risk reward scenario to a point where people can just freely exist, grow and trade cannabis. You guys think we'll see that within the next 10 years?
No.
I would love to, but I'm always optimistic, but I'm realistic as well. And I think, it's a great point that the value of cannabis is because of its prohibition, right? So that's the only reason why it's expensive and it's cool to rob places, because there's value there. But I think at this part where we're seeing Big Pharma come in and we're seeing all these players enter into the game, I don't think that they're going to allow us the free trade that we should have, or allow it to be this peaceful healing plant that it should be.
Fair enough. Fair.
I feel like we need to start a movement to just grow viable cannabis seeds, not hemp seeds, but viable cannabis seeds everywhere. Need to all become little Johnny and Jane apple seeds, and really just overgrow this whole reality. If we get to a point where all of your neighbors are growing weed, what are they going to do? What can they do? And I think more of us need to start this conversation of like, grow some plants to throw those seeds everywhere. Throw them in your bike trail. Throw them in your local bike trail. Throw them in the median when you stop to make a left-hand turn. Like, let's just overwhelm this system with cannabis.
I mean, does anyone find anything interesting how they're saying that 600 pounds of weed equals $10 million?
Please hook me up with those customers, Jason.
Tell me about, bro. You are so right about that. Man.
I've got an ounce of weed for you for only $15,000, bro. It's the best weed in the world, guaranteed.
All day.
Where are they paying those prices at? I want those customers. Call me.
Exactly. And on that, we're going to go to a commercial. We're going to be right back.
The Control Tower from Highly Educated has perfected the dab. Utilizing the concept of thin film evaporation, you can waste none of it and taste all of it. The micro texture of the SE pillar increases nucleation at elevated temperatures. And with the tower propelling at 2,600 RPMs, it's certainly the most efficient dab experience to date. The Control Tower from Highly Educated.
All right, you guys. Well, we have just crossed the 4,000 subscriber threshold, and we want to thank all of you that have subscribed. But we need to do more. We need to get to 10,000 subscribers. And as a thank you to all of our subscribers, I am going to hook up a half a pound of cannabis. That's right, you guys. We are going to hook up a half a pound of cannabis to our subscribers. That's right. 8 of you will have the opportunity to receive 1 ounce of true classic OG if you are chosen. And if you're wondering how you can get your hands on one of these 8 ounces, all you have to do is subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's right, High at 9 News on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button as well as that notification bell when you do. And you could be enjoying an ounce of cannabis right here. or here, or here, or here, or here, or here, or maybe even right here in the studio with me. Make sure you hit that like button and share this post because it may increase or not increase your chances of winning. You must be 21 years old or over, or be a valid California patient, 18 years and over, with a valid recommendation to win. Winners must redeem their prize here in the state of California at any one of the 28 Catalyst retail locations throughout California. Cloud Media is not responsible for any consequences that may occur as a result of consuming cannabis. Please smoke and consume responsibly. And remember, I'm Jason Beck, and I only smoke the best weed in the world. And if you want to smoke as good as I smoke, then you need to make sure that you're a winner in this competition. I'm Jason Beck, and this is Smoky Vanilla. And if you want to feel as good as I look, then you need to get a stretch and smoke with Smoky Vanilla.
Hi, I'm Smoky Vanilla. I have my bachelor's degree in kinesiology, and I'm a sports massage therapist and stretch coach. I focus mostly on individuals that are in sport with chronic pain or injury. I love to intuitively create and customize a session based on the individual that I'm working with. We'll go over a few postural assessments, work together to create a wellness journey based on the health history, past injuries, or anything still affecting you today. And we'll get you back on your feet right away with less pain.
We're about to stretch, and then we're gonna smoke, because we're gonna get on our stretch and smoke. If you want to feel as good as I look, then you need to come on down and get a stretch and smoke with none other than Smoky Vanilla.
An old Ron Jeremy porn.
And we're back, and we are going to roll right into the merriest little troll of them all. That's right, Mr. Mathieu St. Germain. He's the immortal wizard who loves to hang out at Hogwarts Castle on top of just frolic around in the city of Sebastopol. That's right, in Santa Rosa. That's right, it is none other than Mr. the Count himself, the immortal one, Mr. Mathieu St. Germain.
It's Jason. It's Jenny and the departed Rico.
Yes.
Happy Monday, everybody. Got another sweet story about psychedelics, and this one is both exciting as well as a little concerning. MDMA still win FDA approval. There's rally is in short. Veterans, lawmakers, and PTSD experts gathered to advocate for FDA approval of MDMA-assisted therapy and highlight the impact of PTSD and veteran suicide on July 10th in Washington, D.C. FDA is expected to decide this week whether to approve the drug for therapy. It's a crucial moment for the future of psychedelic medicine. August 11th, the Food and Drug Administration is expected to decide whether MDMA, chemical found in ecstasy or Molly, can be prescribed as a treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder. Orders have launched an all-out push to convince the agency. FDA approval is far from certain, given that advisors to the agency overwhelmingly rejected the evidence supporting MDMA in combination with psychotherapy in June. Military veterans have emerged as some of the most visible advocates, arguing it fills a much-needed gap in effective treatments for PTSD. Rogers Mason, an Army veteran, was skeptical when his wife broached the idea. I blew it off, as that's a bunch of woo-woo, recalls Mason, who is 55 and suffered from PTSD for years after his military service. However, treatment rid him of chronic nightmares and dramatically turned down the volume on his other symptoms. He's even planning to travel to Washington, D.C. in the coming days to meet with lawmakers and lobby with other veterans. As of Friday, more than 60 House Democrats and Republicans had signed on to a letter organized by a veterans group calling for FDA approval, and another letter is making it right now. Downvote in June, not to mention the controversy about the trials that spilled into full view during a public hearing, has put the FDA in a tough spot. Eat its advisors' recommendations and deny approval? Greenlight the long-awaited decision on psychedelics? History suggests the odds are stacked against approval. Research shows FDA sides with its advisory committee in most circumstances. The agency does deviate, it's usually in favor of taking a more cautious approach. Hardly ever do they go against a negative vote, says Dr. Aaron Kesselheim, a professor at Harvard Medical School who specializes in FDA law. However, the FDA isn't immune to public pressure. There are times when the agency has moved ahead in spite of its advisors, particularly when patients have mounted an aggressive advocacy campaign. Call and write your senators. The FDA doesn't operate in a vacuum. The staff read the same newspapers that you and I read, he said. The agency has a range of options here. Lycos be required to submit additional data or even run a new clinical trial. Alternatively, approval could come with a requirement to do post-market research plus tight restrictions on how the drug is administered. It's hard for me to speculate, said Lycos' Emerson, but there is no stopping the work on this. We put decades of time and resources into doing this research. Still, most in the field believe that approval for MDMA is not so much a matter of if, but when. Treatment was granted breakthrough status and FDA staff signed off on the trial design, although it became clear during the advisory meeting that certain recommendations were not followed. I think that's important to pay attention to. Dr. George Greer, who signed a letter with DeWitt and a handful of other researchers, was surprised by the unfavorable reception and remains confident the drug will have its day. Benefits of MDMA for people with severe PTSD is virtually overwhelming, said Greer, president of the Hefter Research Institute. Greer takes a long view, having used MDMA in therapy since the 80s in his own private practice. It blocks the emotional fear response to a perceived threat, says Greer. It also provides the emotional energy to face those horrible trauma memories and balance with them. Leanna Mercer, a Marine Corps veteran and director of veteran advocacy and public policy for Healing Breakthrough, speaks on July 10th at the Capitol in Washington, D.C., along with other members of Congress and other veterans. The argument many U.S. veterans make in their lobbying for MDMA is that it works to heal the mental wounds of service, and other drugs like antidepressants don't. Earlier this year, a top doctor at the VA signaled his support for the treatment, which his agency plans to study for mental health along with other psychedelic compounds, separate track from the. These veterans have been suffering and they've not been cared for, says Jesse Gould, a former Army Ranger who heads the nonprofit Heroic Hearts Project. These veterans do not have the 5 years to wait for another FDA trial, he said. Now, on the downside, many scientists are concerned about the scientific rigor of Lycos' research and the serious allegations about misconduct and bias. During the June hearing, the FDA advisors raised a series of objections. Participants were not adequately blinded, meaning they could tell whether or not they had received the drug. That one's hard to deal with. There were also concerns about missing data and lack of evidence supporting the therapy protocol, to name it. The real wild card in the decision is the ethical controversy over how Lycos ran its trials. There's a well-documented instance of therapists having inappropriate physical contact with a patient while she was under MDMA in the phase 2 trials. That really hurts my heart. Another participant in the phase 3 trials has described her own experience of worsening symptoms, suicidality, and being inappropriately influenced by her therapist. These issues and others were raised in a report from the Institute that evaluates clinical research and in a petition to the FDA calling for a public hearing because of allegations that bias influenced the results and some patients experienced adverse events that were not reported. Form of therapy used in MDMA sessions, which is developed by MAPS, has faced criticism that it can lead to abuse of power when patients are under the influence and vulnerable to suggestion. We cannot just use this sense of urgency to push forward a harmful model which would ultimately backfire, says Nenis Devino, a senior lecturer in writing at Johns Hopkins who studies and advocates for psychedelics. Though MDMA goes hand in hand with psychotherapy, the agency doesn't actually regulate that component, the psychotherapy. Ultimately, there's no way to require that the therapeutic approach even be used when treating patients. Most people think a harm reduction approach where you have an approved medication that people can get administered under medical supervision would be the best form of treatment moving forward. Lastly, Rogers Mason says this is not a magic pill, still a lot of self-work that has to go into it. And I think that highlights the real importance of psychedelics right there, that last. Oh, there's a mixed bag. The FDA could end up approving this medicine if there is enough public speaking on it. Really, a lot of the issues highlighted by Lycos' poor handling of this should be highlighted. As we move forward with cannabis and psychedelics, we are going to always be under increased scrutiny because of the cultural backlash of these substances and all of the decades of negative messaging. And so I think it's very important that in every company slows down on their rush to the patent medicine or the approval in order to make money, and really treads incredibly lightly so that we can get great science done and continue to assemble this scientific canon of great studies that show a tremendous amount of efficacy, real rigorous studies. I'm interested to hear what you, Jason and Jenny, have to add, or any questions you might have about this story.
You want to go first, Jenny?
I mean, I'm just still stuck on the fact, once again, here's proof of what happens when we have the wrong people administering plant medicine. Like, it breaks my heart that somebody was taken advantage of because they were trying to go get treatment with an alternative, medication. So, like, I just think that, when I was 19, I got into a whole relationship over, how comfortable you are with somebody on MDMA when you shouldn't be. Like, it's easy to take people down the wrong trail. And I think that it's disgusting that someone who is a medical doctor who signed an oath to protect and care for people is willing to do something like that. And I think it's really shitty that it stands in the way of the good that the medicine can do for people.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. The doctor sounds like a super creepo. That's for sure.
And the other thing that, of course, St. Germain is going to harp on is that if we look at this story, we see evidence of multiple, and this is only a few named groups. There's so many more, multiple groups that are dealing with veterans and PTSD and substance abuse and mental health issues. Mm-hmm. And again, if we as a group, as a polity, American citizens would stop requiring our service members to go to other people's countries in order to either try to police their political systems and or secure their resources for our eventual theft or abuse, we wouldn't have this huge amount, hundreds of thousands of service members living with trauma, nightmares, substance abuse, and mental health issues. And I continue to say the black magic perpetrated on the American public, 9/11 attacks, still shocks me to this day. Even the majority of people who will look at and admit that there is something wrong with what happened to Building 7, as well as the rest of these attacks, seems to be some sort of collusion between U.S. intelligence agencies, the forces that perpetrated these attacks, will still be yelling, support our troops as they go forward into other people's countries for completely pointless wars. Mm-hmm. To, again, secure other people's resources instead of allowing them the freedom to determine their own course in the world. And if we just stop doing the bad thing in the first place, we can use psychedelics more as something to accelerate our evolutionary potential instead of just bandaging our damaged psyches. Mm-hmm.
Fair points. I just wonder, Mathieu St. Germain, because I feel like this MDMA would get through a federal process much faster than cannabis, mainly for the simple point that it's something that can be duplicated in the same way over and over again, unlike
it's a single molecule therapy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it already was, right? Wasn't it used in like marriage and relationship counseling so that, you could be lovey enough to discuss all these things about how your husband pissed you off last week?
It has been, and there's actually a couple of different, or at least one really well-known underground association of psychotherapists in California that has been using MDMA in an unbroken chain since the 60s. Mm-hmm. They were not everyone is a great success, but they do report wild success for most people. Mm-hmm. My wife and I use it. Sometimes we'll just do a little MDA or MDMA by ourselves at the house when the kids are gone, and it does help you to reconnect and to discuss issues in your own self, or your relationship with yourself, your relationship with your partner, in a way where people aren't taking it personal, retrenching into their sides and trying to defend, where everybody's really sharing and open to that sharing, willing to move towards a center and to get along. And I think it's a real reason for why our relationship still feels so vital and young and successful, even though we've been together over 20 years.
Fair enough.
Which is amazing.
Much.
But again, I think the real important thing is what that gentleman who had PTSD, that veteran, said at the end, which is, this is a tool, and it's the self work that really mm-hmm. makes it workable. Like MDMA and all of these things, and like you said, Jenny, like you could take MDMA and think you're in love with somebody, but if that person you think you're in love with is a predator or not willing to do that self work, you could find yourself in a horrible relationship for years. And I also have seen that happen. And we've seen that happen back in the day with Charles Manson, who was trained by Louis Jolyon West of MK Ultra, taught him how to use LSD to take advantage of the youth that were flooding into the hate and to create a cult of people that were willing to break the law and harm other people for him representing himself as a prophet or a God man. There's a high potential for abuse with all of these substances. And that's why when we go back to the indigenous traditions, there's such a rigor the indigenous traditions of who is allowed to use these, how they are allowed to use these, and kind of how they are shepherded through that system, try to prevent the rise of sorcerers. And sorcerers are people who use magic for their ego and their power, whereas the curanderismo or the healers are the people who use these plant and fungal magics to help their tribe. And
what did you call them, Mathieu St. Germain?
Sorcerers?
No,
those are like Darth Vader. And then the healers or the curanderismo are like Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Curanderismo, huh?
Curanderismo, it's a South American term for people who use plants to heal people.
Got it. Thank you so much for that. And we're going to roll right into a commercial. We're going to be right back. I just ordered the summertime strawberry salad when added steak on top here at Anna's. Make sure you do the same thing too next time you're in downtown Long Beach. Come on down and check out Anna's joint on the 400 block of Pine Street. They have amazing selection of beers, foods, and when you come down here to Anna's, you can even challenge me to a game of shuffleboard if you want to lose. Did you get that? So, next time you're in downtown Long Beach on Pine Avenue, make sure you stop by Anna's Joint on the 400 block. Not only do they have Anna's Joint, this restaurant and bar, but they also have the amazing deli next door, and then next door to that they have a very exotic flower shop. You may want to stop by and say hi. And we are back, and we are going to roll right into that Southern belle herself. That's right, Miss Jenny Beth Dills. She's the founder of Kind Cannabis and of Justice Served, a 501c3, all about criminal justice, restorative justice, and all that good stuff. That's right, it is none other than Miss Jenny Beth Dills.
Happy Monday, y'all. Happy Monday. All right. Do we have movement? Do we not have movement? I don't know. You guys can be the judge of this, because the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has officially completed its report into the state of cannabis research in the country 6 months late. As a part of President Biden's Medical Marijuana and Cannabidiol Research Expansion Act signed in 2022, the HHS was tasked with examining the remaining federal barriers to cannabis research, with an initial deadline set for December 2023. The report was sent to lawmakers in June, raising 3 key areas that prevent wider research into cannabis and its potential medicinal benefits from flourishing. Its publication comes just weeks after the public comment period into the proposed rescheduling of cannabis, which, if passed, could significantly streamline the research process. While cannabis remains Schedule I substance, researchers are required to register with the Drug Enforcement Agency, a long and complex process which researchers have complained is not always clear to follow and can vary from state to state. Welcome to cannabis, researchers. Furthermore, the DEA is also required to pre-approve the dispensary where researchers source their cannabis. The agency is yet to approve a single cannabis dispensary, meaning researchers are often forced to study participants' own reporting or use photos of dispensary products. Finally, the proliferation of intoxicating hemp products and inconsistencies surrounding the legality of hemp and hemp-derived products have also driven over caution in the research community. With this in mind, the HHS has recommended that the HALT Fentanyl Act, which would open the door for research on all Schedule I substances, be enacted after getting stuck in the Senate. Also, President Biden's 2022 bipartisan Medical Marijuana and Cannabidiol Research Expansion Act should be implemented, significantly shortening and simplifying the application process for cannabis research. Earl Blumenauer, co-chair of the Congressional Cannabis Caucus and sponsor of the marijuana research bill that led to the new report, said, "I welcome these long overdue but anticipated findings as a signal that the federal government may soon be a constructive partner in the path forward. The Biden-Harris administration must now move quickly to complete the scheduling review, and Congress redouble its efforts to allow the research of dispensary-grade cannabis We are inching closer each day towards the inevitable legalization of cannabis. I'm really excited to hear what you guys think about this. I think the timing is interesting. I think how late they are with, their goalposts that was set for them, and how conveniently close to right after we got all that public comment period finished up, they released this information. It all feels like the government playing games once again, and we're doing much to do about nothing. And we're on this merry-go-round of forever. Are they gonna? Are they not? But Jason and Matthew, I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say about this one.
Man, this sounds like this is just getting set up for Schedule 3 to just hand cannabis over to Big Pharma. That's what it sounds like to me. This sounds like a total setup.
The thing that makes me happy is that maybe we'll get a track for non-single molecule therapies, like we were talking about MDMA being so easy because
it's against the FDA.
It's a repeatable single molecule. Well, if cannabis finds a track through the FDA, then that literally will be a gateway moment wherein then we can get other plant medicines through.
I don't buy that.
Really,
for
what
a
we
second.
need to be doing is there needs to be some sort of public policy group that's advocating for this. And I guess the reason why not is there's no money in it. If we could find a billionaire, buddy, maybe we could. Jason, could you get us an appointment at True Leaf's kitchen table, bro? Maybe they'd like to throw in some money for us to actually do some good in the world and lobby the FDA to get a third track wherein both plants and plant admixtures of one or multiple plants do have slightly drifting amounts of different active alkaloids and other chemicals can be approved for study by the FDA. Because, man, nature is our pharmacy, and what we see with most pharmaceutical medicines,
Facts.
They are concentrated and extracted forms of plants that have healed people from.
You're so right about that, Mathieu St. Germain. A lot of our pharmaceutical drugs do come from natural substances, and then they synthesize them to make these single molecule mixtures or whatnot, and then basically just profiteer off of it.
Epidiolex, anyone? I mean, I think that this is really interesting that they're waiting for a single dispensary to purchase from. It sounds like we're waiting on a dispensary group that's going to give us enough lobbying dollars to become that person. So maybe we do need to sit at the kitchen table for True Leaf and see what their bid is currently.
I'm always open to go and sit down at a good dinner table and see what people are talking about. I'm always open to things like
What's your favorite dish at the True Leaf kitchen table, Jason Beck?
That's a good question. Maybe
Livers of the poor and homeless. Sorry.
I was going to say remorse. But
Great one, Jason.
I try. I do try, you guys. I try to keep you guys entertained. I do try. But like I said, I think this is just all for Schedule 3. So then that way they can synthesize cannabis and outlaw plant medicine. That's what I see in this story. See, that's a good face, Mathieu St. Germain. That's exactly how I feel about it.
Having a moment of silence for the state of our world.
Fair enough. And now that we have completed that moment of silence, I'm going to roll into our final story of the day, you guys. And this is, man, I don't even know what to say about this story, you guys. But they're saying that a 21-year-old New York man was arrested after police find fentanyl-laced marijuana in a Norwalk smoke shop. That's right. A New York man faces several charges in Connecticut after authorities uncovered hundreds of illegal marijuana products, including some laced with fentanyl. How come it wasn't all of them, I'm wondering? At a Norwalk smoke shop, in a statement posted to Facebook on Saturday, Norwalk police said state and local officials executed a search and seizure warrant at Zaza Smoke Shop on Connecticut Avenue on Friday as part of an ongoing investigation into smoke shops who sell cannabis without a cannabis license. The search yielded more than 3 pounds of pure marijuana and THC gummies, according to authorities, and many of the marijuana products seized from the Norwalk shop later tested positive for fentanyl, police said. Authorities said they also seized several hundred products with
with THC concentrations too high to sell legally without a license from the Department of Consumer Protection. Among these products were gummies containing 50 times the legal limit of THC. Much of the marijuana seized was also packaged with misleading labels, police said, and a 21-year-old New York man was arrested in connection with the smoke shop search. He was held on $15,000 bond and is scheduled to be arraigned on several drug-related charges later this month, you guys. Now, I'm still confused as to how you lace cannabis with fentanyl. I'm very confused by this, and I'm hoping someone can explain this. But I think this we have seen out of the Connecticut Police Department that they have claimed this before and had to retract their statements. And I ultimately wonder if they will retract this statement again. But I'm very skeptical of this, and I think they're just trying to gaslight the community. But so who knows? What do you guys think?
Jay, the thing is, like, you're smoking weed, bro, because you're in California, LA specifically. If you look at Twitter or Insta, people are smoking all those white cat turds. They literally look like cat turds that have been on your lawn for like 2 months in the sun. Mm-hmm. And if you're rolling your weed and making cat turds, or even the newer ones, sparkle turds, they add glitter and food coloring.
Yep. I have seen those.
If you're making cat turds or sparkle turds, you obviously already have no care at all for anyone's health, the quality of your product. Super easy to just add some fentanyl at any type of ratio to your little cat turd mixture, and then go to town. If you're selling, 2 years ago outdoor that you bought for $100, you're trying to ruin the weed game and make all the profit in the world. What's to prevent you from adding some fentanyl so people actually feel something from your cat turds that they're smoking?
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, it makes my stomach hurt. I mean, I think. First of all, fiscally, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because you're taking something that's probably not worth a lot of fucking money. Like, your cogs are off, but I don't think these people understand what cogs are either. But yeah, I mean, they're spraying with terps, they're spraying all kinds of stuff on there. It unfortunately makes more sense than it should. And I think looking at these new markets, people just don't know any better. And if some rapper or some trapper tells you this is the fire, all of a sudden this is the fire. And it's because we're doing a really poor job at educating our consumer base, because they just don't know what cannabis is. The fact that I see people posting like purple and blue fucking nugs and they're like stoked on it, I thought it was a joke.
Let's please all, Jenny, let's all start calling them sparkle turds. Call them sparkle turds. Maybe people will stop smoking them.
They are not going to stop. Turds. They're not going to stop.
Dude, you're smoking those sparkle turds again?
I mean, see, here's the thing.
Man.
Here's the thing, you guys. I don't understand how they're saying some of the marijuana was laced with fentanyl, because like if they're selling fentanyl laced marijuana, all of it would be laced with fentanyl. Like that just doesn't make sense. Why some of the packages had it, some of them didn't. I feel like this is very suspect to me. This whole thing.
Well, if they're getting from different places, it could be how some of the carts on your shelf might have some kind of chemical in them, and some of them are clean. Yeah, I think it depends on maybe the supplier and things, but I think that the bigger issue is this 21-year-old guy didn't give a baker's flying fuck about the health of the people that he just wants to get his $20 to $40 off of, and I think that's unfortunate.
I mean, he's just running a smoke shop. He's not in charge of quality control.
It might be his. I think it's his bodega, I think is what they were saying, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm so confused by this. I still don't buy it. I want to see some more proof. I want to see some COAs showing that there's fentanyl in there or something like that. I cannot just trust law enforcement saying that they found fentanyl-laced weed. Like they've already blown this whistle 4 or 5 times, and they have retracted on every single one. There's only one story that we've seen that actually was, and that was in regards where there was a fentanyl dealer that was weighing fentanyl on his scale and then weighed weed afterwards. And that was it, but it wasn't stuff that was sold. So I'm just
that's the only way that
makes
sense to me is
exactly
that's the only thing that makes sense to me is cross contamination. But
I agree with that.
Well, dude, fentanyl too. Like the dosage is so crazy. It's literally a couple of grains of crystal. So you could have contamination if you have it anywhere. Or what you're doing with your weed, your scale, your packaging, your etc. It would be very easy to get cross contamination.
I agree with that, and that's why I said I see that's the only way that it could possibly happen. But I just don't understand the point of it. I'm so confused by this.
Well, the cops lie nonstop to keep their jobs, And we just keep seeing this in this whole completely non-functional drug war that as the American government and law enforcement agencies, as the most readily available, least pharmacologically altered substances such as pure cannabis flower, opium poppy, etc., then people keep moving more and more to spice and bath salts, and then as those more simpler chemicals get banned as well, then they move to these more complex analogs with less testing, more side effects. And it's so crazy that it's like drug legalization has not led to less drug use. It's led to more drug use. It's created billionaire and near trillionaire drug cartels that are beginning to run entire industries and countries. And why don't we just all grow up a little bit, take a breath, realize we all want to amend and adjust our consciousnesses, that legalizing drugs would actually create harm reduction. And a lot of people say harm reduction, and that's kind of become a buzzword that people just, freak out when they hear it. But if we think about harm reduction, reducing harm be a goal for us. Instead of trying to create a puritanical state wherein we can legislate the behavior of everyone, really think that we should focus on harm reduction, helping each other as mature adults and friendly family members.
I mean, I agree, but John Plantum, Phantom, sorry if I messed your name up, John, but says fentanyl can't be put in a pipe and smoked. You have to use foil and a lighter with a straw and chase the dragon. That is the only way to heat it to get high, he says. And I threw in the chase the dragon part, but
wow.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with him on that. I still don't get it. And also, Thomas Cross also threw in the chat, says, I guarantee the marketing team at Cookies could get people to buy a strain labeled sparkling cat turd. That was
Sparkle turds.
That's pretty cute. It's pretty cute.
Oh boy.
Any other final statements, you guys, on any of this?
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday, everybody.
Love you guys.
It is the most important day of the week. That's right. And thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Big thank yous to our audience and supporters for tuning in daily and listening to the insanity that is the developing cannabis industry. Huge thank you to Catalyst for helping us keep the lights on, and thank you to our correspondents for being absolutely amazing. Thank you, you two. And thank you to Cannabis for giving us a reason to do this. Thank you to Cloud Media Partners, Millie in the building today. And thank you all for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us. It is America's #1 daily cannabis news show.